I want to tell you what it cost me to fall in love with a girl called B in Pattaya. Not what it cost emotionally, I'll get to that. What it actually cost, in money, because I did the maths properly after, the way you do when you finally let yourself look at something you've been avoiding for the best part of a year, and the number made me feel physically sick in a way I genuinely wasn't prepared for. £11,400. I'm Graham, 61, Stockport, divorced 4 years before any of this started, after a marriage of 26 years that had been quietly dying for the last 5 of them without either of us having the nerve to say it out loud. 2 grown kids, both with their own families now, who don't know the full story of what I'm about to tell you and aren't going to hear it from me. As far as they're concerned, Dad had a couple of nice holidays to Thailand a few years back, and that's the end of it. I went to Thailand the first time on a mate's recommendation. He'd been going for years, every winter, said it was the only thing that got him through the Stockport cold. 2 weeks in Pattaya, sun, beer, the whole package, the kind of trip you book when you're newly divorced and your mates tell you that you need to get out there and live a bit. I wasn't looking for anything serious. I want to say that clearly because it matters to everything that came after. I wasn't some lonely, desperate man trawling the bars for company. I was a normal bloke on holiday, 2 weeks of sun after a grim Manchester winter, having a good time and not expecting it to turn into anything more complicated than that. I remember the flight out, stopping in Doha, the heat hitting you the second the doors open even at the airport, that specific Thailand smell of jet fuel and humidity, and something sweet underneath it that I still can't fully place even now. My mate had given me a rough itinerary, told me which areas to stick to, which to avoid, where to get a decent breakfast. I followed about half of it and improvised the rest, the way you do when you're 58 and finally feeling like a free man for the first time in nearly 30 years. I met B on the 4th night, a bar on Woking Street, the kind of place that's lit up like Blackpool illuminations at Christmas and twice as loud, music bleeding out of every doorway, neon stacked on neon for half a mile in either direction. I'd had a few beers already at a quieter place down the SOI and wandered up there mostly out of curiosity, the way you do on holiday when you've got nowhere particular to be and the night's still young. She came and sat with me because that's the job. I understand that now, completely, and without any illusions. But at the time it didn't feel like a job. It felt like she'd noticed me specifically out of a packed bar of 40 or 50 men and decided I was worth her evening over all of them. She was 26. I was 58. I'm not going to pretend that gap didn't cross my mind, because it did more than once in the early hours when I was lying awake in my hotel room turning the evening over. But she laughed at the right moments, properly laughed, the kind that crinkles the eyes rather than the performed kind I'd already seen plenty of in other bars that week. She asked about my life back home and actually seemed to listen to the answers. My job in insurance, my kids, the divorce, the bit of golf I play badly on weekends. She had this way of touching my arm when she was making a point that felt completely natural rather than practiced, light, just for a second, gone again, before you could properly register it. I bought her drinks, lady drinks they call them, and I knew even then, that first night, that the bar takes a cut off every one she gets through, but I genuinely didn't care. It was 40 pence a drink for me to have her sitting next to me for another 20 minutes of conversation that felt, against every shred of sense I should have been applying, like the best conversation I'd had in years. By the end of that first holiday, I'd given her £300. It came up on the second to last night. Her mother was sick, she said, something with her kidneys, hospital bills the family couldn't cover. She didn't ask directly. That's the thing I want people to understand. She never once directly asked me for money in 11 months. She told me about a problem and let it sit there, and I was the one who offered, every single time. I didn't think twice handing over that first 300. It felt like nothing against the way she looked at me when I gave it to her, genuinely moved, or what looked exactly like genuinely moved, tears actually forming, her hand pressed flat against her chest. I went home, Manchester Airport at 6 in the morning, grey drizzle, the particular flatness of coming back from somewhere warm to somewhere that's neither warm nor interesting. And then within 2 days, she'd messaged me online, the app everyone out there uses. Good morning, Graham, with a little sun emoji. I miss you already. We kept talking every single day after that. Good morning texts with little heart emojis. Photos of her day, what she'd eaten, a temple she'd visited with her daughter, a new dress she was thinking of buying. Questions about mine, real questions. What had I done at work? Had the rain stopped? Was I eating properly? She remembered things I'd told her weeks before and brought them up again unprompted. Asked how my daughter's job interview had gone. Asked whether my knee was still giving me trouble from the golf. Small things, the kind of small things that felt at the time like proof she actually cared, because who bothers remembering small details about someone they don't care about? I went back 4 months later, booked it almost the moment I landed back in Manchester the first time, if I'm honest with myself now, even though I told everyone it was a spontaneous decision made much closer to the date. 2 weeks again. She took time off work to spend it with me, or that's what she told me, and I believed her completely, no hesitation at all. We did everything together that trip. She showed me parts of Pattaya tourists never see, a proper local market 2 streets back from the tourist strip, where I was the only Farang in sight, and felt for the first time like I was seeing something real rather than something built for people like me. Took me to meet her cousin, who ran a small repair shop, and shook my hand warmly and called me a good man in halting English that felt entirely unrehearsed at the time. Cooked for me in her flat, a one-room place above a hardware shop that smelled of lemongrass and motorbike fumes from the street below, and I sat on a plastic stool eating something extraordinary that she'd made from almost nothing, and thought, genuinely thought, this is more real than anything I had in 26 years of marriage. It felt like a relationship, properly felt like one. It felt like the real thing finally happening to me at 58, after a marriage that had quietly died years before anyone admitted it out loud, after a divorce that had left me feeling like something slightly used and discarded. B made me feel for the first time in longer than I want to admit, like a man worth wanting rather than a man being tolerated. That trip I gave her £800. Her motorbike had been damaged, she said, sideswiped by a songtho. Her arm grazed in the accident, though I never saw a mark on it and didn't think to look closely enough to wonder why. Then there was a problem with her daughter's school fees. She had a 6-year-old daughter, I should mention, from a previous relationship with a Thai man who'd left when the girl was a baby. I'd met the little girl twice on that trip, a quiet thing with enormous eyes who called me Uncle Graham within about an hour of meeting me, and I genuinely loved that, genuinely felt something paternal, stirring, that I hadn't expected and couldn't quite name. I went home again. Manchester Airport, the same grey drizzle, the same flatness. The messages continued daily, same as before, same warmth, same small remembered details. Then came the bigger ask, though again never directly framed as an ask. She wanted to start a small business. A noodle stall, she said, something she could run herself instead of working the bars forever, something with dignity, something that would let her be home with her daughter in the evenings instead of out till 3 in the morning. She sent me photos of the location she'd found, a corner spot near a school. Good foot traffic, she said, the kind of detail that sounded researched and sensible. Photos of the equipment she'd need, a handwritten list of costs in careful English that came to about £2,000. I sent it, not all at once, in installments, because that felt more responsible somehow, more like I was managing an investment rather than just handing money into a void. I even asked for updates, photos of the equipment as it arrived, and she sent them, a wok, a cart, bags of noodles stacked in what looked like a small kitchen. Over the following 8 months, I sent her money for the noodle stall, then money because the noodle stall needed repairs after flooding during the rainy season, then money for her mother's hospital bills again, a different complication this time, then money because her brother had gotten into trouble with a debt and needed bailing out before something serious happened to him. Always a reason, always urgent, always followed by days of intense gratitude and affection that felt every single time like confirmation I'd done the right thing, like proof of how much I mattered to her and to this whole fragile little family I'd somehow become a quiet part of. I went back a third time. This was 11 months after we'd first met. I told myself this trip I was going to see the noodle stall in person, see the business I'd funded with my own money, money I'd worked for, money from an insurance career that had never once felt this meaningful when it was just sitting in a pension account. Meet her properly in daylight, in her real life, not just in the bar at night under string lights and music that made deep conversation impossible anyway. There was no noodle stall. I want to describe finding that out because it's the part I think about most, even now, more than the money itself. I asked her to take me there on the second day of the trip. She got cagey almost immediately, said it was closed that particular day, said the area wasn't safe for tourists at that hour, said a dozen small things that didn't quite add up and that I'd have caught instantly if I'd been thinking about anyone else's situation rather than my own. I pushed. I'd never pushed before, not once in 11 months. Something in me had finally, quietly, had enough of accepting whatever she told me without question. She got upset, properly upset, said I didn't trust her after everything, said maybe I should just go home if I was going to be like this now. I went anyway, got a tuk-tuk driver, showed him the address scrawled from the photos she'd sent months before, and asked him to take me there directly. There was no stall. There was nothing resembling what she'd described, just a regular street, a phone repair shop, a laundrette with washing machines visible through a dusty window, none of it matching a single photo she'd ever sent me. I confronted her that evening back at her flat, the same one that had smelled of lemongrass on my second trip and now just smelled like something I didn't trust anymore. She cried, properly cried, the same tears that had moved me so completely 11 months earlier, except this time I watched them with a coldness I didn't know I had in me. She said the landlord had thrown her out months ago and she'd been too ashamed to tell me. Said she'd been planning to start it again, somewhere else once she'd saved enough. Said everything she'd told me was true, even if the timeline had gotten confused somehow. I wanted so badly to believe her, sitting in that flat with the ceiling fan turning slowly above us, that I almost did. I sat there with my chest absolutely hollow, wanting one more lie to be the truth more than I have ever wanted anything. I went home early, cut the trip short by 4 days, told the hotel I had a family emergency, which felt true enough in its own way. I didn't message her for 2 weeks after I landed. She messaged me constantly during that time, worried, apologetic, begging me to understand, sending photos of her daughter looking sad, which I now recognize as the most calculated thing of all, and which at the time nearly broke me completely. Eventually I asked her directly, the only direct question I'd asked in the entire relationship, was any of it real? The business, the daughter's school fees, the brother's debt, any of it. She stopped replying after that question. Not immediately. A few more messages trickled in over the following month, shorter each time, increasingly defensive, then nothing at all. The account went quiet permanently. I found out much later, through a forum for expats who'd had similar experiences, a thread that took me a full evening to read because I kept having to stop and walk away from the screen, that her real name probably wasn't B, that the daughter may not have existed at all or may have belonged to someone else entirely, that this entire arrangement was very likely run alongside 2 or 3 other men simultaneously, each of us believing with absolute conviction that we were the only one funding her dream. £11,400. That's what I added up when I finally sat down on a Sunday afternoon 6 weeks after I'd got back and went through every single bank transfer over those 11 months. I'd been telling myself smaller numbers the whole time because I'd never once looked at the total, never let myself add it up properly, just kept each transfer in its own little box in my head where it felt manageable. Looking at the actual total, written out in my own handwriting on a piece of paper at my kitchen table, broke something in me that took a very long time to put back together. I'm not telling you this because I think I'm uniquely stupid or uniquely gullible or uniquely anything. I worked in insurance for 30 years. I assess risk for a living, or I used to. I've since learned through that forum and through a fair bit of reading I did afterwards in the months when I couldn't think about much else, how common this exact pattern is, the bar, the genuine seeming connection, the small ask that grows slowly enough that you never notice the total climbing, the constant daily communication that creates a real and powerful sense of intimacy, the always just out of reach happy ending that keeps you invested in seeing it through. It's not random and it's not personal, much as it felt entirely personal while it was happening to me. It's a method refined over years, run on dozens of men simultaneously by people who have got extremely good at it. And it works precisely because it doesn't feel like a scam while it's happening. It feels like falling in love with someone who happens to need a bit of help. If you're sending money to someone you met in a bar in Thailand, someone you've built an entire emotional relationship with through a phone screen over months, someone whose business or family crisis always seems to need just a little bit more right when things were starting to feel settled, stop. Not because what you're feeling isn't real to you, because I promise you it is. It was entirely real to me. Stop because what they're showing you very likely isn't real to them, and the version of love you think you're in is being run as carefully and as professionally as any job, because to them that's exactly what it is. I wish someone had sat me down and told me that before my 3rd trip instead of after it.